Welcome to Learning Photography with Duck. Here's your host, Duck.
Dun dun dun. Hey everybody, welcome once again to another edition of Learn Photography with Duck, and as always I am your host Duck. And today, as you can see, wrong side, this side, is our photo Q&A. So hopefully you guys got some questions, but to get some of the things, the brain juice is flowing. There's a couple of things that I was thinking about recently, and one, of course, is the project challenge that I threw out a couple months ago for you guys to get a collection of your photographs together and put them together into a book, so that way you can have a physical record, something that you can hold in your hands and thumb through and share with family and friends of your favorite photographs. So hopefully that hasn't gone out of your thoughts and you're still thinking about it and putting stuff together. But most recently, I started thinking about something that was in a discussion in a chat room recently, and that's on the importance of personal projects. And I know most of you are not quote unquote professional photographers where you're dealing with client work on a daily or weekly basis, but the subject of personal projects came up in a discussion with some other commercial photographers in one of the groups I belong to. And it was the discussion started off with how do you handle burnout? And kind of stepping a little bit on that is how do you handle when you don't have the motivation or you run out of ideas of things to do. And it was fairly unanimous in the responses that came up, where the overwhelming suggestion was to take on a personal project. So get away from the work side and just find a personal project that kind of reinvigorates you. And so that got me thinking about the challenge that I had put out to you guys to put together a book. And of course, I'm working on the images from Ireland to put together in a little book for myself. But I'm also starting to undertake some personal projects of my own for the express purpose of getting out of that everyday rut. All right. So if you feel that your photography has kind of plateaued or gotten to a point where you're not motivated to get out and take photos, consider changing it up. Try something new, try something different. Set yourself a little goal for a personal project, something that is going to motivate you and hopefully something that you feel you can accomplish. So along with that, I was in another discussion in also a product photography discussion group, and the discussion came up on somebody was asking for suggestions for educational content. Where can I go to learn about such and such stuff? And it got me thinking about a little bit about what I do with you guys and putting myself in your shoes, because, I also am learning right along with you guys. Uh, my favorite saying is, if you didn't learn something new today, you wasted a day. And, I really, 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 take that to heart. Um, One, because I love to teach, but more importantly, because I come from a family of teachers. I have both my parents were teachers. I have relatives who are teachers. I married a teacher. I almost became a teacher myself in the public school system, and I got turned off really, really quickly. So I turned my attention to private education, and I love what I do. I love sharing my knowledge with you guys. And of course, nowadays with the technology that we have and the resources that we have, especially with YouTube, there's just a lot of stuff out there. And part of the discussion was, how do you find good teaching resources? And that's what got me thinking about all the countless of hours I spent, watching, YouTube videos, especially back in the day when I made my transition from film to digital, and I kind of needed to relearn a lot of things. I was fortunate that, it was at the time where YouTube was just beginning to become popular. And I saw it as a resource. And I remember going through, video after video, and I noticed that there were a couple of things. And it's something for you guys to kind of think about. The majority of the videos out there just touch on the basics, which is okay if you're at that stage. But what I found is, once you get past the basics, a lot of the, photography instructors said, well, you know what? If you want to go beyond the basics with me, you're going to have to pay. Here's my course for, such and such. Here's a course on how to do this. Here's a course on how to do that. I'm going to tease you with all the basic stuff, and then I'm going to suck you in, and, you're going to, if you want to pay for the real stuff, here's a paywall, and, come join me on the other side of it. And, it's good business practice for, photographer. Photography is a tough business, and if you're working full time, you probably don't have time to be teaching. I have the luxury of being able to pick and choose, because I'm kind of sort of semi-retired. I can pick and choose the projects that I take on, when I want to take them on. And, I do this because I love sharing. Those of you who've known me for, the past several years have come to know this about me. But the other thing that I'm noticing now, which is a little bit more of a cautionary tale for you guys, is that there's also a lot of gimmicky stuff being put out on YouTube, and a lot of like half truths that makes it a little bit more difficult to round out your education. Because you suddenly find that, well, so and so is saying this, but this other person is saying that, and they don't quite meet. And it's like, now you have to figure out, okay, who's telling the truth? Is it the same truth, two sides of the coin kind of thing? And it makes it very difficult. And unfortunately, if you don't have a lot of knowledge behind you, it can be very frustrating, because it's hard to determine, what information is correct and what is just smoke up your behind. So now, with things like ChatGPT and this AI stuff coming into fruition, I'm starting to see where people are starting to use ChatGPT to quote unquote create their content. And in a discussion group with my mentor, he's got his own little private Facebook group. And the past several months, there's been a lot of heavy talk about artificial intelligence and specifically text-generated imagery, which is a big point of contention with a lot of photographers for obvious reasons, but also with these chat GPTs where you give it a prompt and it spits back some material. And of course, a few of us went in to kind of challenge ChatGPT based on the information we know. And we've come to the conclusion that ChatGPT is good for the broad strokes. ChatGPT is good to initiate ideas, but it still fails with a lot of the specifics. It'll either make up stuff or cobble together things that, just absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. And one of the things that we noticed, because it's pretty blatant, is when somebody was using ChatGPT for a more scholarly body of work, and ChatGPT was spitting out all these references, quotes and references to people and periodicals and books that just don't exist. We found that ChatGPT was making things up. So just like the text-generated image creation, what it does is it takes little bits from here and there and cobbles it together to create something, new and unique. But those bits and pieces are already out there. They've been created by somebody else. So ChatGPT is taking little bits here and there and putting it together and presenting it as something new, including references, which just blew my mind, because that's the last thing you want, is false references that can't be looked up, because it just destroys all credibility. But what I'm finding is that a lot of the younger creators who don't have enough personal experience or enough personal knowledge in something, and they feel that they need to generate information and content in the form of videos, they're going to resources like ChatGPT to gain that content and then just repackaging it and throwing it out to unsuspecting viewers. So this presents a problem for us who are now in a position that we want to learn about a specific, task. In this case, we want to learn about our hobby of photography. And, we're getting this stuff that sounds plausible, but when you actually sit down and analyze it, it's empty, it's garbage, it's made up. So I just wanted to, kind of point that out to you guys and let you know that, when you start going out there looking for information, it doesn't have to be about photography. It could be anything. When you start using, video sources for filling in those gaps in your education, we now have a new level of awareness we have to take on and do some research and say, okay, is this information legit? or is this just some made up hogwash that's, thrown out just for likes and subscribes? Okay. So anyway, that was my thoughts for the day. And maybe a good way of just generating some questions here. So
Hey Doug, this
yeah.
is so new, and the fact that from what understanding what you've said and what I've heard from other people, these robots or whatever go out to the internet and search everything that's ever been written and come up with something. And there's so much bad information out there to begin with.
Yes.
You're gonna need real fact checkers to check the facts.
Yeah.
I think what's going to have to be is a new discipline where kids in school and adults are taught, okay, there's this thing called GPT, chat GPT,
Yeah.
and you got to learn how to use it. It's just like how you had to learn how to use the internet. I find Wikipedia to be more reliable now than it used to be, or at least the stuff that I go look at. And I go look at things in a trade related type of thing. If I would go look at something that I know nothing about, I would not go to Wikipedia. But if it's something where I'm a subject matter expert on, I will look at that and I will look at other sources. And I think it's a mindset that we have to teach people.
Yeah. But you said it, you hit it right on the head, is, looking for other sources. I mean, we're all at the age where when we went, to school or college and we had to write some kind of term paper, we had to list our sources.
Yes.
We had to create a bibliography saying, hey, this is where I found this information. All right. And to that point, Wikipedia tries to create that bibliography at the bottom of the page so that's,
Yes.
Somebody, and there are reference numbers that point to where these, references are. So you can follow up. But when it comes to, this new chat GPT technology, that is non-existent. And what's happening, what I'm seeing is that a lot of these people who are using this program are whatever spits back out at them from chat GPT, they're just saying, okay, it must be true because, this is an artificial intelligence that's compiled this from sources, out on the internet, and therefore it must be true. And that's the problem, is there are no references to double check. So now it becomes a little bit harder, and we have to now go back in time, how when we were, referencing stuff, and we have to do our own legwork and say, okay, is this information legit? Okay. And yeah, that's where it's really, really failing right now, so anyway, before I get too much further, let me go ahead and remind everybody that we have the photo walk coming up at Chapman Falls, Wednesday, April 26th. Did I correct that? I think there
Yes,
was.
you did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
You had it 16th and you corrected it to 26th.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So the 26th at 4 p.m. So if you're not doing anything that day at that time, come and join us. It should be fun. The thing that I just found out, my wife told me, is that the swing bridge over by the Goodspeed Opera House, has failed. It's not in operation. It's still allowing cars right now to pass over it. It's the gear mechanism's shot on it, and they can't rotate open it. So at some point they're going to be closing that bridge for repair. So those of you on this side of the river, because Chapman Falls is on that side of the river, for those of us, New Haven County, Fairfield County here, just double check, make sure that you can get across the bridge before heading out. Otherwise, you just take 95 over the bridge and then come up the back way. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. I'm looking to get together a multiplicity photo shoot. Thanks to Bill, I have found my location, which is going to be Hubbard Park. At the main entrance, there's a little lagoon with a water fountain and really nice landscaping all around it. And so we'll hang out there for a multiplicity shoot. I don't have a date yet. I definitely want to wait until we get some leaves on the trees. They're just starting to come out. So hopefully in a couple of weeks, we'll be really, really good. So I'm thinking sometime next month, we'll be doing that. That's always a lot of fun. And of course, if anybody has any suggestions for other types of meetups that you'd like to do, or a workshop that you're interested in, let me know. I do want to get some kind of street photography event going. I haven't been in New York in a while, so who knows, maybe a little trip to New York City. I don't know if you guys are up for that. Otherwise we can keep it kind of, close to home. And of course, maybe a flash photography out, using flash outdoors or something. If that interests you guys, we'll do that. And of course, the CTPPA's annual convention is going to be coming up June 23rd to the 25th. They're still putting together the roster of speakers because they had to reschedule from last month. So anyway, that's coming up. All right. This is Q&A. So if you have a question, hopefully I will have an answer for you. So if anybody's got something that's being, they have a roadblock or they're stumped by something, here's your chance. And it could be anything, whether it's editing or whether it's camera work or lighting, whatever it is. Okay. All right. And I think last time I said, Gloria, you better have a question for me. Put you under the gun here.
Oh gosh. I told you once about this thing. Surrounding how this thing works. This.
Oh, yes. The where's mine? The color checker.
Yeah, the color checker.
Okay. So there's two parts to the color checker. Okay. If you you got the passport, right? That's a little plastic one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's also this, which is like a bigger version.
Oh no, I don't
Okay.
have that one.
And then they have a larger version of this. So what is a color checker? All right. A color checker, all right, and in this case, this is green and this one's green. That's why it kind of disappears with my green screen capture software here. You can see through it, but those are green. All right. So we have a series of color chips on this side. And on the back side, we have grayscale, everything from white to black, and of course, 50% gray up at the top. So they do two separate things. if you want to color calibrate your images, you will use this side, and it's used in conjunction with a color calibration software, which you would load onto your machine, and it works with Photoshop, and it works with Adobe, Lightroom, and DxO. I think there's a version for DxO. There's and a couple others. Capture One, and I'm sure there's probably a couple others that it works with. And so what you do is once it's loaded, the software is loaded on, let's see, give me 1 second, see if I can find it here. Let's see, publish services. I don't know if I loaded it to this one. I may not. So what you do is you load the software, and what you'll do is you'll place this. If you're shooting a person, okay, you'll have them hold it like this, okay. If color is the priority, all right, you do it like this. Usually you'll use this with like product photography, okay. In that case, you put it on the table where you're going to be shooting your product, and whatever lights you are using, that's what you're going to photograph with, all right. And you take a photo of it, okay. That's for the large one. For a small one, you'll do the same thing. You know, you'll put this on the table, and you'll photograph it.
The whole thing?
Yeah, the whole thing. What's that?
The two sides.
We're concerned with the colors. Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. And in this case, you're pretty much concerned with this one. All right. This one, I don't use this often, but this one. All right. And you can see that there's little, let me see if I can show you. There's little corner markings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I normally do is I will crop to those corner marks. All right. So that just the colors are the image. Okay. Then you're going to export the image to the X-rite software. All right. Export to the X-rite software. And what the X-rite software does, all right, it has all of these chips are color calibrated. So it says, all right, this yellow here has an RGB value of X, Y, and Z. Okay, whatever it is. Okay. So it looks at the photograph that you just took, finds that yellow patch, and says that yellow should be X, Y, and Z. If it's not, it says, okay, in order to get it to X, Y, and Z, we need to modify it by this much. And it does that on all the chips. And it spits out a color profile. All right. And a color profile is, let me share screen. Okay. And the color profile is, let's go here. Okay. Where it says profile. All right. You won't see it here. All right. But if you click on that four little boxes, right, it will load it here. It will create a new listing here. Okay. And you name it whatever it is. I usually name it by whatever the project is. Okay. And now when you have all your images selected, you just come here and you click on that color profile and it applies that profile to the image. So now your colors are going to be truer to life than previously, because it's adjusting all the colors across the spectrum. Okay. You can also use it for landscape artists. Okay, if you're a landscape photographer, let me go back to here. Okay, you'll probably use this one here. Okay, and you would use the blues to calibrate your images. So again, under whatever lighting condition you're photographing, you just put this on the ground, prop it up on a wall, wherever, fill the card. All right, and then you go around, shooting whatever you got to shoot. Then when you come back, you load this, you crop it so it's nice and tight. You run it through the X-rite software. It kicks back a profile, and now your colors are truer to nature. Okay, so that's how you use the color profile. All right.
Does your monitor come into effect at some point?
Not at that point, no.
Not at that point? Okay.
No. So what it's doing is it's comparing the RGB value of the color captured by the camera, okay, and comparing it to the RGB value that it's in database, and say how far off are they, and it's going to make that correction. And it's independent of any monitor, okay? Which is the beauty of that particular product, is because once you calibrate it, you know that you're good no matter what kind of monitor you're using, all right? Color calibrating a monitor, that's a whole different, tool set, okay? If you are a portrait photographer, you'll use the same thing, but most of the time what I do is I cheat it, and I'll use this side here, okay? Or if you got the larger one, that'll be this one here, okay? This is a neutral gray card. It's color calibrated. Right.
So the big one.
Both. All right. They're both the same. All right. They're slightly different gray, but they're both the same. All right. They're neutral gray. Neutral. Okay. And it's I'll get into it in a second. It's neutral gray. So when you use the white balance eyedropper, all right, you'll just place it on here, and it's going to change your white balance to whatever's reading here.
Okay.
All right, and it just sets your white balance across the board. All right, and then you'll just transfer that white balance to everything in your workflow. Okay. The way these are created is that they're special calibrated pigments that are used to create these chips. All right. So there's a couple things you have to be careful of. When you handle it, avoid putting any fingers on it. All right. I know it looks like I'm touching it, but I'm actually not. I'm just hovering my finger over it. Okay. Avoid getting any of your oil from your hands on these. Also, avoid leaving these exposed to light. They do recommend buying a new one every, so many years. I dated mine when I got this 2017. So technically it might be a little bit out of date, but I keep this in my studio well protected. I always keep it closed so it's not being exposed to any ultraviolet light. But if you use it, especially if you're like an outdoor photographer, if you use it constantly, over time, the pigment does tend to get bleached out, and it's going to render the calibration as, you know, crap. All right, this one is a New York card. This one's
Yes.
two years old. Okay, so and you would use it the same way. All of these are neutral. So what does that mean by neutral? When you photograph this, the light that reflects back, all right, is going to be the same on the red, the green, and the blue channel. All right, so if under ideal lab conditions with a neutral light hitting this, it will reflect back a neutral spike in your histogram. All right, so what does that mean? All right, if we look at the histogram, all right, you'll see that all those multiple colors up there. Okay, all those multiple colors. All right, that's a representation of the blue, green, and red channels. All right, so in that one, can I? It's not going to let me. Yeah, it's not going to let me do it. But you can see how it has the that's big spike all the way on the left hand side. You can see that there's blue, and then there's cyan, and then there's green. All right, so the blue and the green, where they overlap, that's cyan. All right, so that means that the blue channel and the green channel are off. They're off a little bit. Okay. And then the red channel, you notice that it's lower and further towards the center. And where it overlaps the green, you'll see yellow. Okay, so if you understand the color wheel that I keep harping on, RGB-CMY, okay, RGB-CMY, this is what we get. This is our color mix, okay? If I were to photograph that card under neutral white light, all those colors will overlap each other, all right? And the closer they are to overlapping means the more neutral that color is. All right, so you're getting that perfect color balance. Okay, when it shifts out of sync, that's when we start getting a color cast. All right, so that's where you get the warm tones or the cool tones. Okay. All right. So anyway, so protect them. Oops, let me go back. Protect these, keep them out of the sun. Avoid touching them with dirty hands if you can. Okay. And load that software into your computer so you can create color profiles. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So this, if I have old pictures, this is not going to work. It has to work.
Not really. All right, because it's designed to capture. The way you use it is you want to use it at the beginning of your capture. You're gonna put it under the same light conditions. Okay, so yeah, it won't work to past work. You can use the color balance. I mean the white balance to a certain extent. You know, if you can, like for example, if you shot outside your house, you know you can kind of sort of replicate it. You're gonna get fairly close. you know. But ideally, you want to photograph it at the same time that you're shooting your client or your products or whatever it is, because you want it under the same exact lighting conditions as your work. Okay. Otherwise, you know. So imagine, okay, here's the scenario. You're doing portraits in a park, okay? And because there's a lot of trees around you, you're getting a heavy green cast, all right? And oftentimes, you know, we'll look at the back of the camera and everything looks pretty. And it's not until we get back to the studio or to our house and we open it up on the big screen that we notice, ooh, skin's looking a little green. All right. And the reason being is we have all this light that's being reflected off of the trees that's hitting our subject. All right. And it's giving that, you know, because it's reflecting off of green, it's going to reflect that green color on them. All right. So here it is, you know, 2-3 days later, you're no longer there. You say, oh, I forgot to shoot my color calibration card. Let me go outside and you know, I'm at the same location, but maybe it's a different time of day. Maybe it's a different cloud cover, whatever. All right. The amount of green being reflected back isn't the same. So you're going to get close, but no cigar. Okay. Or worse still, you know, you say, okay, so we moved from shooting outdoor underneath the trees to shooting in the alleyway between two buildings, and the buildings happen to be red brick. Well, guess what? That color balance that you shot, the card that you shot under the green trees is not going to work in the new location. So you have to make sure that when you get to the new location, you shoot a different one, because now what's bouncing off of the red brick building is a lot of red light. Okay, so you want to be able to neutralize that red cast, and you shoot it. You shoot the gray card underneath those lighting conditions. So when you get back to the studio, say, okay, that gray should be neutral. Okay, so you click on it. The Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw is going to set a new white balance. Okay, that white balance is designed to neutralize that red. So you don't even need any kind of, you know, secondhand software. You can do it right in Lightroom. Lightroom says, okay, that's supposed to be neutral. All right. When you click on it, it says, ooh, there's a heavy red channel influence. But the user is telling me it's supposed to be neutral, so I have to remove all that red. All right. And when it removes that red, it gives you a new white balance, and that's what you apply to all the images taken in the alleyway. Okay. When you click on the color balance for underneath the trees, Lightroom's going to say, ooh, there's a heavy green influence. I got to remove all that green. And that's the color balance that you apply to those series of images. Make sense?
Yes. So the camera, what white balance I want to.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Kelvin or
there's two schools of thought. One is, okay, whatever general lighting condition that you happen to be shooting in, whether it's outdoor, full sun, you know, outdoor in the shade, maybe you're in fluorescent lights, maybe you're using tungsten lights. What you'll do is you'll change the setting on your camera to match the settings under which you are photographing. here's the problem. All right, actually, let me pull up a slide real quick. Where are charts? Okay. All right. So what we have here, oops, it's not liking that. Okay, let me go to, all right, here we go. We have, these are the typical settings that you will find in your camera. And then of course you have the ability to create custom ones. Okay. But most of the time you're going to be looking at these here, which you dial in from your camera. All right. These are kind of default settings, and different manufacturers are going to have different calibrations to them, but roughly they fall under these color temperatures here. Okay. But here's the problem. Okay. So let's say we are outdoors taking some senior pictures for a client, and it's a little bit cloudy, so we put the camera on cloudy. But during the shoot, not only are you shooting in cloudy, but sometimes the clouds break, and sometimes they get a little bit heavier. All right. But if we look at cloudy skies or shade, we have a color temperature that ranges anywhere from 6,500 to 8,000 Kelvin. That's a broad range. All right. So if our camera is set to cloudy, it's going to be on the low range of that cloudy sky. But, if the clouds get a little bit, heavier, that color balance is going to shift. Okay. It's going to shift. It's going to get a little bit, a little bluer. All right. So, we can't really rely on the camera to set that for us. Okay. Now here's my take. Okay. Camera, and you should be shooting raw. All right. I think I chastised you once on that. All right. You shoot raw because that gives you the most amount of flexibility. Yes. When you shoot raw, the raw profile doesn't care a squat about what color balance you are in, because it's going to capture whatever color is out there. Okay. What the color settings, the white balance settings on your camera do is it corrects for that color cast in camera to that little JPEG that is showing back at you on the back of your screen. It has nothing to do with the internal file whatsoever. It's whatever that JPEG is coming back. Okay? If you shoot JPEG, then it kind of sort of becomes baked in. But if you're shooting raw could care less. Now, because I know this, and also because I tend to put my own artistic version to the color balance during my editing, I don't worry about color cast or color settings, or I'm sorry, white balance settings on my camera out on the field. I could care less. All right. So my philosophy is when I'm out in the field, the less I have to worry about settings on my camera, the more effort I can put to the creative process, to thinking about what's out there rather than what's happening in front of me in the camera. So I tend to keep my camera set to normally to shade, all right? Or sometimes I'll do cloudy, but most of the time I just keep it to shade. And the only time I will change it is if I need to show the back of my camera to somebody else. All right. I don't want to be taking portraits and say, hey, what do you think of this? And they look at it and they're orange or they're blue. All right. Because they're going to go, oh my God, I hired you. All right. I want to show them something that resembles them a lot closer. So at that point, yes, I will pay attention to that. But most of the time, if I'm shooting for myself, I could care less what that white balance is because I know I'm going to be changing it when I get the pictures home. Okay. So I just put it, I picked cloudy and shade a long time ago. I probably should keep it on daylight because that's actually, more neutral. But yeah, so I usually don't bother. Okay. So keep in mind that the settings on your camera are going to give you a close proximity based on the lighting conditions, but when you shoot raw, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. The other thing that I found is that there are other things that will influence that color balance. Okay. For example, I don't have my camera in front of me, but your camera also has color profiles that you can select. All right. You can select the landscape or the portrait setting or the sports setting or the pet setting, the waterfall setting. A lot of cameras have all these little profiles built into it. All of these profiles override these settings. Okay. They override these settings. Okay. So you can set your for example, you can set your camera on flash, but if you have your color profile set to landscape, all right, that's going to boost the greens more. All right. So it's not going to be at this point. It's going to be maybe further up, closer to this point. Okay. So just keep in mind, pay better attention in the post-processing than on the camera side. All right. Because that's where it really, really influences. Okay. If you're the stickler for getting it right in camera, then sure, pay a little bit more attention to it in camera, but just keep in mind that, a lot of the times that doesn't matter because you're going to be changing it anyway. Okay. Does that make sense for you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Anybody got any questions on any of what was just discussed? Anybody? No, we're good. All right.
You know what I have trouble with is in Photoshop. I mean, I take that back. Photoshop, it's easy. Is in Lightroom doing healing, doing the healing,
Okay.
where you have to start it in one place and drag it. Whereas in Photoshop, all you have to do is click once.
Well, it depends on the tool that you're using.
I'm talking about, right? It's the healing. It's the spot healing, the spot
Yeah.
healing tool.
All right,
That,
because
that I have trouble with in Lightroom.
okay, because there's spot healing. There is clone. Let's see. Let me go to let me find an image here. I don't know if this will serve as a good tool. All right, yeah. All right, so let me zoom into down here. Okay, so we have a little bit of debris going on here, and it says, okay, well, you know what I want to do is I want to clean this up a little bit. So if we go to our spot healing tool, which is our part of our local adjustment tool set, okay, it's the one that looks like the little band-aid, okay, and we click on that, we have, so the changes that I made to the program last time obviously did not work because we hung up again. Okay, so here we have our beach, all right, with all this debris, and let's say we want to clean it up. Okay, all right, this is where this is where we hung up last time. Let me share. Okay, share, big screen, share. Ta-da! Okay, good.
There we go.
All right, so we want to
You were
clean.
sharing anyways,
Yeah, I was sharing before, and it.
just now. You said let's share, but you were already sharing.
Oh, no. Sharing in Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, sharing in Zoom. Okay. So we have, you know, all this debris. Maybe we want to clean it up. So we have some options available here. All right. So if we click on that little healing brush tool, the little Band-Aid, we have content aware, regular heal, and regular clone. Okay. Now the content aware, the way it works is you're going to paint over whatever you want to remove. All right. But when you do that, you want to make sure that you get a little bit outside of the area that you want to remove. All right. Because what it's going to do is it's going to sample from around it and use the AI to fill it in. Okay. So that's what it looks like with right here. That's what it looks like with the AI. Okay. So for that, you have to make sure that you have that first icon selected. Okay. The second one is regular heal. All right. And what that does is you do the same thing. You just kind of paint the area. Okay. But when you let go, Lightroom is going to automatically select for you someplace to pull that information from. Okay.
Yeah, this is the part I don't like, because with Photoshop, all I have to do for the healing brush is to just paint over
Yeah,
it.
because what you're doing in Photoshop is you're using the content aware.
Oh, okay.
All right. And you're not using content aware in Lightroom. Okay. All right. Let me explain the three, and then I'll explain my thoughts on the three different tools. Okay. So the second tool looks like the little Band-Aid. Okay. And what it's going to do is it's going to create. All right. This is my original selection. Okay. And you can see that it creates a secondary mirror of that. So what it's telling is whatever content is in here, we're going to superimpose over here. all right? And it does a little bit of blending to the edges so that it's not as noticeable, all right? But if we look at it, it's almost a carbon copy. Here, let me remove that. It's almost a carbon copy from where it's sampled. Okay? So this is the original, and this is the sample. Okay? Make sense? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The third one, which is the clone, all right, it's very similar to what we just used, all right? Now let's say I wanted to get rid of this little stick. Let me make it a little bit smaller, all right? I'm going to, again, paint the area, all right? And now I have to go ahead and select what I want to use to clone into that area, okay? Now here's the thing. When you use the heel, okay, which is right here, I can take that, whatever it's sampling from, and I can still move it.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So I don't have to settle for what the computer or the AI has selected. All right, so the AI is going to select something it thinks is a suitable match. If you find that, oh, the AI failed miserably, you can reposition that accordingly. All right. And when you move it, it's just going to rework it and do its magic and blending and so on.
And do you click,
Okay.
do you click your mouse again?
No, as soon as you move it and let go, it's going to update automatically.
Okay.
Okay. It's the same for both. Okay. If you change any of the settings here, all right, like for example, maybe you change the size well, the size really is not going to make a difference because it's where you painted. But if you change the feathering on it, or you change the opacity, meaning how opaque is the new heel on the whatchamacallit, on the on the fix, all right, how intense is it? Okay, if you change any of those, then you'll need to hit the refresh. Okay, but if you just drag it from one location to a new location, it usually doesn't matter. It's going to auto-generate the new cover. Okay, so the clone and the heel, even though they seem like they do the same thing, there's a slight difference. Okay, and it's just how it interacts with the underlying layer. A clone is going to literally, it's like taking a rubber stamp and putting it into the new location, where the heel does a little bit of interpolation between the scene that you're overlaying and what's underneath it. All right, and it's going to try to make it blend in a little bit more of an original fashion, and give you something to kind of avoid that repetition of pattern. Although it does a fairly decent job, so that's the one I use the most often. Okay, but when it doesn't, that's when you're going to need to experiment with some of the other ones. All right, where I find it fails miserably is when it's on the edge of between like two different types of textures. All right, so for example, where I find it really fails is telephone wires or power line wires in a landscape. If you want to remove them, it does a fairly decent job on sky texture. It does an okay job on any texture that has like foliage or greenery behind it, trees, there's enough of a disruption of pattern going on behind it. It does a decent job. But where the power line comes into the building, right where it touches the building, sometimes it has problems because it's trying to interpolate that what should be a hard, very defined border between the building and the power line with the trees, for example. It gives it that little kind of like a fuzzy, blurred out mush. All right. So at that point, what I'll do is I'll come up with the healing brush up to just almost touching the building. All right. And then I'll use the clone right where it touches the building, because then I can just sample from either above or below along that line of the wall. All right, and it's going to give me a cleaner patch. Okay. So, for the most part, it works really, really, really well. But when it fails, that's when you have to use something else. Okay. The other one where it fails is if it's trying to do way too much, like you want to remove a car or a building. All right, then it really fails because it's trying to use, its internal logic to say, oh, I need to, sample from this, but where it's sampling from isn't large enough to cover that area. All right. And at that point, you have to be creative. And that's where I'll bring it into Photoshop, because I can piecemeal it and sample from different areas in order to create a new non-repeating pattern. All right. That's the biggest issue with any kind of cloning or object removal, is where you get that repetition of pattern, because it's sampling from someplace really close by. And you see that, oh, that's the same leaf as that one. Oh, that's the same twig as that one. Oh, that's the same, light post. It copied that light post into this one. All right. And you have to kind of like go in and finesse it. So, but yeah, so that's the differences. So if you want to replicate what Photoshop does, you'll want to use this first one, the content aware.
Thank you.
So, okay. So yeah, the icons look different between the two. So the content aware in Photoshop looks like that Band-Aid.
Yes.
So, it makes sense to click on the Band-Aid here. Right?
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
It's like,
but totally two different tools. All right. So yeah, they need to fix that. So, all right. So hopefully that kind of alleviates that pressure point for you.
Thank you.
moving forward. Okay. Anybody else?
Yes, I have a question. A Photoshop question.
All right.
Plaguing me for a while, or understanding it. This is over in the layer area.
Okay.
The layer. Gosh, why can't I? Oh, I know. Okay. Yeah, I've used this product before. Why isn't that shown? I was just in there a minute ago, and now it's not.
All right.
Okay, layer style, blending options.
While you're doing that, I'm going to open up my Photoshop, and hopefully we don't crash again. Okay.
So one thing, I'm doing two things, so it's a larger question. I'm trying to use Photoshop like Illustrator.
Okay.
And what I was doing, I was actually trying to make, I was playing around with some letterings, and I was trying to make the letters look like they would be an emblem on a car, a chrome emblem. That's one thing. But while I'm in there, over in the layer style, there's the thing where you can click OK, cancel, and then it says new style and preview. And I've never really understood how that works. I always thought it was to import a style, but can I come in here with layer styles and do a bunch of stuff and then just save it, or what's going on there?
All right, hold on. Let me let's see. Create. I'm just gonna create a blank document. All right, so you said, all right, in layers.
Well, if you go into the layer style, you go to, the layer and the image.
Oh, layer.
Layer style, and then if you click on blending options, it brings up the whole set of menus. Bevel and emboss, stroke, inner, outer shadows, satin, color overlay.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I know exactly where you are now. Okay. Let me pull my...
Mainly we use it for drop shadow.
Yes. Okay.
But over on, and I guess maybe I've never really understood how to use this or but there's a thing over there where it says new style, create a new preset from the current settings. So would I come in here if I were I got something the way I wanted it and I wanted to use it somewhere else? Is that how that works?
All right, hold on. Let me get here. Oops. Delete. Okay, make that black. We'll make that. Oh, why is that so small? Okay. Sample. All right. So there we go. Let me. Okay, so that dialog box is gonna pop up anytime you have a layer available. All right, so in this case, we're working with the text layer. All right, I just picked text because that's what you said you were using.
Yes.
All right, the way I normally access it is if you click on any of the blank area of the layer, all right, if you double tap, it's going to bring up the dialog box.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And if we look down the left-hand side, you're going to notice that a lot of this is kind of sort of self-explanatory. The one that you've seen me use quite often is the blend options. All right. And that's where you take and you tell Photoshop that the layer that I'm working on, because the text layer in this case, this is the text layer that is selected. Okay. So that becomes your current layer. All right. How do I want to interact with the underlying layer? Okay, and that's the underlying layer. In this case, the underlying layer is solid white. Okay, so you're very, very limited as to what you can do. Okay, and I know this is this is a point of contention with you, Brian, because we had a discussion about this understanding of that 50% gray, and how it relates to blend modes, and kind of getting wrapping your head around. But
that's the word I would use instead of contention. I'm trying to understand it.
So in this case, just think of it as so we have a spectrum between black and white and all the gray tones in between. Okay. What part of that range are we looking to preserve? All right. So in this case, if I take the black point, okay, all right, so think of this as kind of like your histogram, where black is all the way on the left and white is all the way on the right, just like any other histogram, okay? If we take that black little pip there and we bring it over, you're going to notice that the text disappears, okay? Because what it's saying is, I want to preserve any gray tone. All right, let's say I put this right in the middle for 128. Okay, 128 is middle gray. All right, so I want to preserve any pixel that falls within this range. I want to preserve it. Well, the text actually sits right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete it. We're not going to make it visible. We're going to hide it. Okay? But it's a temporary hide because we can always go back and manipulate that and bring it back. Okay? All right. So let me create, for this example, let me create, here, I need to cancel out of here. I'm going to create a box. Okay. And I'm going to fill it with a gradient. And we're going to do the gradient. Oh, we're going to do the gradient going across there. Okay. There we go. Say okay. All right. That's our gradient. Okay. So now if I double click, we bring that back up. All right. So I have a piece of artwork that I want to blend into my background. Okay. And I say, I want to preserve all of this. Okay. I'm going to keep. All right. And this part I want to hide. Okay. So we look at here. All right. We want to keep it. We want to hide it. All right. Keep that in mind. So what we do is we bring this slider over. And as I bring it over, it is removing from view all the pixels that fall within that dark pixel range. Okay. Now, it's very obvious here because I have a very linear gradient being applied for illustration purposes. When it comes to people, when it comes to landscapes, there are gradients within, the subject, okay? So I'll show you how that plays into effect later, right? And you say, okay, well, that's a very hard, if we look at this, that's a very hard edge, right? So if we press the Alt or Option key and we go to that little pip, we can separate it. And what it does is it softens that edge transition. All right, it's like putting a feathering on that edge. Okay, and we can say okay. All right, now if we bring it from the white side, we can say okay, I just want to target all the pixels that are within that kind of like 128 to 171 range. All right, that's the only pixels we have. Okay, so that's how that color blend works, or the layer blend works. Okay. All right. Very complex. It really does take a lot of practice to get used to this concept. Okay. But we'll get back to it. All right. So that's the default. But if we work down on the left-hand side, the next one is level and emboss. All right. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a fake embossing on the edge of your selection. All right. So anything that is transparent pixels it's not going to apply the effect. Okay, that's why it can be used for things like text, because when you put text, everything around the text is a clear, transparent pixel, so your alpha channel. Okay, if I were to put that effect on my background, all right, it's going to put it all the way on the outside edge, because that everything else inside that has pixels that are of some color. In this case, it happens to be white. Okay, and you have a bunch of settings. All right, different types. You know, emboss, deboss. You can do a hard chisel. You know, so it looks like somebody carved it into a headstone type chisel. Or you can have it nice and soft and rounded over. All right. So all kinds of good stuff with, like, for that pillow. All right. The size and the softness. All right. And then if we look further down right here, all right, where it says glass contour, all right, it'll pull up, it looks like a curves adjustment, but what this does is you can map how that contour is going to look. Okay. And if we click on the little down arrow, there's a bunch of presets. All right. So you can have, really funky kinds of effects. Okay. Oh, cancel that. All right. The linear one's the default. All right. You can add a contour. You can add texture to it. What it's going to do is it's going to pull up your patterns, okay? And you can say, okay, apply that pattern as an overlay, and you can control the scale, all right, and the depth. So you can apply textures to that bevel effect, all right? Back in the day, I used to use this a lot when I was making my own image-based buttons. Long before CSS, where you can create fancy buttons, I had to make image buttons for websites. This is where I did it, okay? All right, next one down is stroke. All right, and that's just gonna apply a stroke on the outside. All right, here, let me go to the text. All right, stroke. All right, so we can add all kinds of funky, different colored strokes. Different strokes for different folks. All right. Inner shadow. Well, inner shadow here is not going to affect anything because the text is black. But
So there's a plus sign, so I can have
okay.
more than one stroke,
Yes.
or where they've got any of these things. So okay.
Yep. All right. So let me show you. Here, hold on. Let me cancel this. I'm going to hide this one. We'll use the text as an example for this. All right. All right. The one that a lot of people will use is the drop shadow. Okay. So the drop shadow allows you to position what looks like, whatever you're applying it is raised off the page. In this case, it's the text, makes it look like it's raised off the page. Now, the nice thing about this is we can go right to the page itself, click, and we can drag that shadow around wherever we want in real time and, play with it that way. I find that's easiest because I can say, okay, how does it look? All right. So let's bring it down this way. All right. And then from there, we can put the distance, all right, which we can actually manipulate live. But the spread, all right, the spread is how much outward we're allowing that shadow to be intensive, okay? and then the size. All right, the size is that feather edge, the size of our feather edge. All right, so the spread is how intense that feather edge becomes. All right, and the size is how big from that shadow our feather edge is. Because what it's doing is, if you notice, if I bring everything so it sits directly behind, it's the same exact size as what is creating the shadow, all right? So the distance is how far off from behind. The spread is from that original size, how far outward does our shadow intensity spread, and the size is that soft transition. Okay. All right. So oftentimes with text, it's not a big deal. All right. We can get away with just using one layer. But sometimes, we want to add something to our photo that we want to make it a little bit more realistic. So if we just take the size, all right, and the spread, and we, make it soft, all right, that's not a very realistic shadow, because we understand that shadows are usually created by sometimes multiple light sources. Okay. Or if we're using diffuse light, the diffusion shapes the shadow slightly differently. So what we can do is we can add anything that has a plus, we can add a new layer, all right, to that effect. All right. So if you notice, it intensified it. So now if I make my size a little bit smaller, I bring the distance in a little bit and spread. Okay. You'll see that, and we'll put the opacity a little bit less. Okay. And then if we create another one, we make that even smaller. We bring that in even a little bit bigger. All right. And we bring the, all right. So now we have, it looks a little stepped here, but we have a more natural gradation. Okay. So we can make our effect look a little bit more realistic by having multiple shadow effects. Okay. Now, you can't save these. All right. Well, you can. You can create, I think you can create an action for it. So you can pretty much save it if you come up with something that you need to use over and over again. But within here, I think you can create a new style. Okay. So what it does is whatever settings you apply here, it's going to save, all right, in your layer effect. All right. And then you give it whatever name makes sense to you. And that way you open up a new image, you apply the new style. All right. And the styles are right here at the very, very top. All right. So you can have these are the ones that come with Photoshop by default. All right, so you can have a style that applies a bevel. All right, so if you've got multiple things that you need to create for a website and you want to keep that same style across the board, you save it here, and now you just apply it on any element that you need in your project, and it becomes a one click. All right.
Doc,
yeah,
this is part of my original question. So like looking at this fur one, for example, or any of these things, like,
okay,
so was there some place where, is there an image involved, or is that all
no
texture?
no So what this does is everything on the left hand side is being adjusted according to what's saved in that style package. All right.
So somewhere I could see see, what confuses me a little bit, for instance, is like if I look at the fur,
Yep.
and I can say, okay, but then I click over and I click on the third one, which is, I don't know what they call that one. But
That's like
the
zebra
first part.
stripes. Yeah.
Yeah, zebra stripes, but I'm looking at that going, how do I make those two different distinctions using bevel and emboss and all those other things?
Okay.
That's where I guess I'm kind of lost. Is
All right. So if we,
all a function of all those things in there?
all right. So, all right. Here's the styles. All right. Let's go to this natural one just to put something different on the screen.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So this one has, it looks like plank flooring. Okay.
Right.
But if we look at the plank flooring, it looks like there's a bit of a drop shadow. There's some kind of a stroke to it. There's some kind of bevel to it. There's an inner shadow. All right, not just an outer shadow, but there's an inner shadow. And of course, there's a pattern being applied. It looks like there's a gradient overlay. So everything that you see checked here is being applied.
Oh, that's what it is.
Okay.
So that pattern stuff.
All right. So now you say, okay, well, I kind of like this one, but I don't want that drop shadow. Okay. So we can click on our drop shadow and it says, well, there's two of them. All right. I don't want them. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I don't want that second one. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. Okay. All right. So here's the pattern. Here's our gradient. Oh, it's got a color gradient. Okay. So it goes from dark to kind of like a little brighter in the center and then back to dark. Okay. So maybe I don't want it to be red. Maybe I want to do, a different color. Okay. So now let's say I want to do something a little bit more brighter towards the edges. All right. So you go, okay. Double click on that. We'll bring that. Okay. All right. And hit okay. All right. So now we have, it doesn't look as red and dark on the, the outside parts of our sample. Okay. It's got that brighter yellow tone to it. All right. That inner glow looks like it does good. All right. But maybe I don't want the stroke. All right. I want it so it looks a little bit more subdued. Okay. I can either, uncheck it, or I can just say, okay, I'm just going to delete it. Okay. And all that's left is just that inner shadow, the inner glow, the gradient overlay, and the pattern. All right. And now you can say, okay, I like that one. I'm going to save that as a new, whatever, a new style. Okay. So you can make adjustments to these styles, but just realize that if I go back and click on that original one that I had, okay, it's going to return back to whatever was saved with that particular style. All right. So styles, the best use is you make your own. All right. Because you're going to be making it for a specific need rather than trying to fit a need into one of these prepackaged ones. All right. The nice thing about the prepackaged ones is it allows you to kind of dissect it and see how they made those particular ones. But if you have a custom project, you're going to create your own, so you were talking about doing something where the lettering looks like it's chrome.
Yeah. Well, you answered my questions where I was confused, because I'm very familiar with the stroke, all about that thing there.
Okay.
I forgot about gradient overlay, and I was always under the impression that thing is over on the right-hand side, that was something that you imported and ready to go. I didn't know that you could bring in these other options and then, like you say, go look at them, because that's what I needed to know, because that's what I would work, is I'd come in here and go, I kind of like that, but I'll start farting around with this, that, and the other thing to get where I want. So, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. So, as you're building, whatever it is that you're putting together for your client, let's say we give it a stroke and we're gonna, make it a bright blue, and it's gonna be, let's do the outside, and we're gonna make that 6 pixels. Okay. And we're going to do a little bevel and emboss. We're going to give it an outer bevel, and it's going to be chiseled. And so it makes it look like the lettering is raised. Okay. Whatever it is you do to this, now you say, okay, all right, I made it for this particular graphic that I'm going to be using on this page. All right. But I know I have other pages in this website that I need to create this style for. All right. So you can say, okay, I'm just going to create a new style. And the way I normally name them is whatever the client is, all right, or the project name. All right. I will give it the project name and then what the effect does. Okay, so let's say I'm working on header text and I want all my header text to have all the same style. So I'll say project name, header text. All right, and then save it. Okay, and make sure that these check marks here are appropriate. All right, blending options, I usually with text, I'm not using any kind of blending options, so I make sure I don't inadvertently save any blend options. Okay, add to your current library, obviously yes. Okay, and include layer effects. Definitely, you want all these layer effects to be saved. So anything that has a little check mark in these boxes is going to save that information. So think of it like a preset. It creates a little recipe card with all the instructions as to how to build that particular look. And it's gonna anything that's not checked, it's gonna dismiss. Anything that's checked, whatever values, it's gonna save, so that it applies those values down the road. Now, when you're building a preset like this, you have to understand that, like for example, in this case, let me back this out. My text is 72 point. All right. If I were to apply that effect to something that's smaller, let's say 24 point, it's going to look horrendous because it's saying apply a 6 pixel border, all right, to a 72 point text. But if you do that to a 24 point text, that border is going to look humongous. All right. So you have to be aware how you build it. And then when you do it down the road, you use the same parameters for the initial application. Okay, make sense? Right.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Awesome.
And but what you're saying, could have used a lot of this information about 15 years ago. Because that's what I used to do. Before CSS, I was a web guy, and this is how we did all our graphic stuff.
That's how I know this stuff. I used to do this all the time. All the time. Yeah, it's a lifesaver.
I stole the buttons from someplace else, and it was freeware.
Yeah. That's another thing. You open up the button and you just apply the text over it. Yeah, I did that too. Oh my goodness. All right, so hopefully that opens up new avenues for you, Brian.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay.
The embossing would be good if you were to, you wanted to use it as a frame for your picture, wouldn't it? Let's say.
Yes. Absolutely. All right. So, we'll get rid of these two.
Well, yeah, you'd be embossing the whole layer instead of just the text layer, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to pick the whole picture to stand out.
Yeah, so use this to make it into a frame. That'd be cool.
Yeah, actually,
Hey, Doug?
Yeah.
For the example, can you actually bring up a picture?
Yeah, actually, I did it on the one I did recently of, I think I ended up undoing it, of the Seville Dam.
Uh-huh.
All right. Yeah, I think I undid it. All right, but here we'll do this. Edit. I'll edit a copy. All right, we can get rid of this. Okay, hopefully we don't. Okay, all right. So you have an image that you want to create a little prestige to. All right, and you say, you know what? I want to make it look like. What I like is not so much a border. I'm sorry. Let me take that back. Not so much a frame, but something that kind of replicates a mat. All right. I find that, me personally, I find they look a little bit more elegant than putting a frame around it. Okay. But the same principle applies whether you're creating a frame or whether you're creating a mat. Okay. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do Control Alt Shift E, and I'm going to do a stamp layer mask. All right. Actually, you know what? I'm going to delete. Okay. The first thing we need to do is we need to expand the canvas. Okay. Because if we add a mat or we add a frame to our existing image size, we're going to be cutting off. All right. So imagine if we have a 1-inch frame and we decide that we're going to apply that frame here. All right. It's going to cut off a good chunk of the perimeter of your image, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make sense? All right. So we don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to expand our canvas. All right. So image, canvas size. All right. Not image size. Image size is going to scale it up or scale it down. All right. We want to change the canvas size. All right. So the canvas size, and it's going to bring you up this little dialog box. Okay. Now, you have several options. We can do it by percentage, by pixels, by inches, centimeters, all of these. All right. I avoid the one that says percentage. All right. Because what happens is it applies a percentage size to the width and that same percentage size to the height. And because the width and the height are two different sizes, it's going to give you two different percentages or results. Okay. So if you add 10% to 4 inches, all right, it's going to give you a different size than if you add that same 10% to 6 inches. Make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. So I tend to avoid the percentage because it's going to give me a different size across the top and bottom than it is on the left and right. Okay. I will either go with a pixel count, all right, or with inches, all right. And in this case, because I have a 5,000 by 3,000 pixel image, I'm just going to go by inches. Okay. The next one you have to make sure of is this one that says relative. Okay. If you have it off, you're going to notice it's going to populate this with a width and a height. This is the width and height equivalent of your current image based on the pixel size and pixel depth. All right, whether it's, in this case, it's 240 PPIs. Okay, so it's giving me an image size of 23 inches by 15 inches. Okay, I don't want that. I don't want to be doing any kind of math in my head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that relative is clicked. And now you're going to notice that it says 0 and 0. Okay. The next one you're going to pay attention to is that little grid down below. This indicates what point is this expansion going to happen from. All right. So think of it as clicking on the upper left-hand corner and dragging it up to resize it, or clicking here in the lower right and dragging and resizing. All right. If we want it even all the way around, we want to make sure that it's right in the center. Okay. And you have the option of picking anywhere along that outer edge of the image or right in the center. All right. In this case, I want it from the center. We're going to go an even amount. And I'm going to go 2 inches by 2 inches. So it's going to add 2 inches to left and right and 2 inches top and bottom. Okay. And we hit, all right. If this becomes active, all right, you can pick white, black, gray, or specific color. All right. In this case, it's not. All right. We're going to go OK. And it gives us, you can see it's giving us a transparent, all right, edge. Okay. The alpha channel, which is what we want. All right. And in this case, I'm looking at it and it says, you know what? I want it a little bit bigger. All right. So we're going to go back to image, canvas size. I'm going to add another 2 inches to left and right, top and bottom. Oh, what the heck? Image, canvas size. Oh, from our original. Okay. So we're going to go 4 and 4. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I know what I did. Duh. I was not paying attention. Where is it? Image. Anybody see what I did wrong? I forgot to change that 2 inches.
Oh.
All right, there we go. 2 and 2. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now we have a nice wide border. Okay. Okay, so now I can create a frame around this if I want, okay? Or I can make a mat. I'm going to show you how to do a mat because that's probably the easiest of the two. I'm going to create a solid color layer, okay? And I'm going to pick something neutral for now. All right, we can change it layer. And I'm going to drop it behind. Okay, so now we can see that everything that's transparent on our image layer is allowing that gray to come through. Make sense? Okay. So here's where we get into our magic using those layer styles. Okay. I want to make this look like a natural textured cardboard mat. Okay. So I also want to make it look like the image is, I like it floating on top of the mat, but we can also do it so it looks like it's, a typical mat that's cut out. We can do either or, okay? So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to double click on my color fill layer, all right? Make sure you click on the empty space and bring up my layer style, okay? And I want to apply a texture, all right, to the to that layer, okay? So we can click on. Well, I don't want to add. I don't want to add a bevel to the back layer. I'm just going to go and say pattern overlay. All right. Make sure that pattern is selected. All right, and we're going to. I have a pattern that I use, which is literally a photograph of actual paper. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the blend mode to multiply. All right. So anything darker than that, darker than white is going to affect the underlying tone. Okay. All right. And
excuse me, sir. You have a Facebook message.
Everything here is going to be pretty much default. The only thing I would change is probably the scale, if depending on the size of your original. We're just going to keep it for default for now, and I'm just going to hit OK. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can see what this. Oh, no, this is a texture that I created. Never mind. I forgot about this one. Okay. All right. So it's applying this texture to that gray. Okay. All right. So now I have a texture on it, makes it look a little bit more like paper. All right. Now I want to give it the image, make it look like it's interacting with that matte paper. So we're going to go to our image layer. Okay. We're going to go ahead and double click. Brings up the dialog box. Okay. And here's where we can go to our bevel and emboss. Okay. I'm going to keep it zoomed in here. All right. And what we want to do is I want to give it an outer bevel. All right. So I want it to affect the outside. I'm going to pick a depth. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. I can't go to the outside because there's no pixels to the outside. We're going to keep it to the inside. Okay. Give it a depth and a size. Oh, or can we? Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, we can. Okay. Never mind. We can do an up or down. All right. And what that means is it's going to switch where it's applying the highlights and the shadows. All right. So in this case, let's see, hit OK. All right. See how it's brighter on the bottom and right hand side. All right. And it's darker on the top and left. Okay. That is with our up and down. All right. If we change it, it's going to make it look like it's raised. If we go down, it looks like it's inset. Okay. So we're going to give a size and depth. All right. I'm just going to max out the depth and the size. So makes it look like the mat's been cut. Okay. just a little bit. All right, and hit OK, Control 0. And now it looks like we have a frame slash matte. Okay, so you can use it, you can do it this way. All right, the way I like to do it, I'm gonna go ahead and double click on that. All right, is I'll take that off, and I will I will add a drop shadow. Okay, and again, we can go right to, make sure drop shadow selected. We can go right to our image and we can move that shadow around. Okay, and what I like to do is I like to give it a little bit of size and a little bit of spread. Okay, and offset it just a tiny little bit. All right, so the offset, oh, and you can change the angle. All right, how much of an offset, so you can change it here if you want. Okay, or you can just click and drag it here. All right, so distance about 6, spread. All right, and then the opacity is how light or dark, all right, we want. All right, and somewhere about middle usually works pretty good. All right, and maybe a little bit more distance, a little less spread. Hit OK. And there we go. All right. So this is one of my favorites, but if you notice, there are areas where the luminosity of the image matches the luminosity of the shadow effect. So what happens, all right, and you can see it like right up here, that edge becomes super, super soft. There's no crispness to it, all right? I like a little crispness for my image on this matte effect, all right, because it makes it pop a little bit more, all right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back and I'm going to add a stroke, all right? And all you need is a little bit of a stroke. I'll usually go either 1 or 2 pixels for the stroke. And of course you can determine what color, all right? Here's the trick that I use. Double click on the color picker, all right? You can pick from in here, that's fine. But what I like to do is I like to pick a color from the image itself, all right? So if you hover over your image, you'll notice that you have the little bullseye for your color picker, all right? And you can pick any of these colors, all right? And you know, you can do white, and it's going to change that here. I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it. Okay, color picker. All right, here we can pick a color from the sky. We can pick a color from the water. We can pick a color from the snow. All right, so what this does is it coordinates it with the color palette of your image. All right, in this case, I'll probably pick something from the sky because the problem I was having is that upper right-hand corner was a little bit too soft. All right, so I'll pick a sky color to kind of use as my separator, and you can, you know, click anywhere and until you find a color that you like. All right, once you're happy, all right, you can hit OK, or you can modify it. You say, oh, well, maybe that's a little bit too bright. I can, you know, bring the luminosity of that or border down, make changes on it here. All right, and once you're okay, you hit OK. All right, let me go back to, I'll do 2 pixels. Okay, and you hit OK, and now look at that upper corner. It pops. Hopefully you guys can see it on the video. Okay, whereas before, let me turn that stroke off. See how soft that looks? And now it pops. Okay, And I can, if I want, I can even pick the color that's closer to that upper corner. All right. But, you know, I kind of like the way that that gold tone from the sky works against these dark tones on the edge of my image. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to find something that separates it from that the tonality of the border that I choose. All right. And all of this is editable. So I can take, you know, and I can make my matte color, you know, let's say I want to choose something from the, you know, from my snow. Okay. All right. So now that pops a little bit too much. I don't, you know, that to me looks ugly. Okay. Oh, let's make it very garish. Okay. So, you know, you're able to, you know, choose. Oh, here we go. There you go. Maybe there you go. That looks nice. That doesn't look bad at all. Okay. So you can make, you know, whatever changes. All right. And of course, if you want to add a bevel effect to the your background, you can do that as well. Bevel effect, inner bevel. I'm going to go chisel hard, size. Is it doing it? Inner bevel, chisel hard. Oh, you know what? It may not be able to do it because it's a whatchamacallit. It's a color layer, editable color layer. Okay. Yeah, may not do it. Emboss, yeah. Okay. No, doesn't do it. I misspoke. All right. All right. Any questions on any of this? Okay. If you want,
I have a question.
yeah.
It sounds like what you've been doing here, this sounds like a case for an action.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There's bunches of them out there already.
Yeah.
A starting point.
You know, so you know, let's say you're going to submit you want to submit images to CAP. All right. Well, first, find out in their regulations, can you submit digital images with a digital matte? Okay. That's step number one. If they say, yeah, digital mattes are okay, then, you know, you want all your images to be the same. You know, so you make one, create an action from it, open up the other ones that you want to submit, apply the action, and voila. Just like that, you have 3, 4, 5 images that all have the same style to it that you can submit. All right. Let's say, you know, you're very active on Instagram and you want to give your images that little extra pop. All right. Give it a little bit of your own personality. All right. This is where you do it. And of course, you can also do something where you add a signature. Okay. So, you know, maybe you have, let's see, where's my, all right, we're going to go, you're John Hancock. Okay. Obviously, I probably wouldn't use yellow in real life. All right. Or you might say, you know what, that needs to be a lot smaller and over here. Okay. So you can do all kinds of neat things. Save it as a as an action, and it'll do all of that for you. Cool. Any questions?
Cool.
All right. Of course, I can complicate this and say, well, you can build the same thing as a file that you can save, and instead of having an image, you just create an image frame, and then you open up the file, you drop your image into the frame, voila.
Yeah, that would work.
That would work. Okay. So those of you who like image frames, here you go. Okay.
Well,
But
this
then
right here, if you turn this into an action and you wrote it correctly, well, I don't know that much image frame, but don't you sort of have a predetermined size with that?
yes.
And it would seem like if you were, I don't know about the writing in action, but you might be able to write it so that it could handle a 4:3 frame as easily as a
Yes.
16:9 frame, or the same action could handle both.
Yeah. So where you have to be careful when writing an action is how do you determine the size of your canvas expansion so that it fits different formats and different sizes. Okay.
Yeah.
At that point, maybe using a percentage
Yeah.
works best. And then at that point, the only change you would need to do is, go in and modify your canvas size accordingly. So you apply the action, it does it, and you says, okay, well, my top and bottom rails are a little bit too thin. So I go in, do a canvas size, and just add to the top and bottom and not to the sides. So, but yeah. Okay. Or you know what? Here's another idea. All right. Give let's say if the majority of your images are landscape format, you say, okay, I'm going to add 10% top and bottom and 6% left and right. All right. And then at that point, if at any point the size is a little off, you can always take that image and move it up and down to compensate. So you make the top, left, and right the same size, and whatever's left over you apply to the bottom. All right. And that always looks nice because now you have a little bit of a bottom weighted map, if you've ever seen those. All right. And at that point, all you got to do is just, select your image and then just move it. All right. You can reposition that anywhere. Okay. All right. Awesome. Any final questions before we sign off? We good?
I have a question that I don't expect you to answer now, but I used to do that. I worked with another product called Xara, Xara.
Never heard of it.
Years. It's a British German company. It's kind of a combination of Photoshop and Illustrator, so it was kind of vector based. Anyway, one of the things I could do, and I'm wondering if I could do this in Photoshop. For instance, if I had a picture and I put a text layer over it, like words, one of the things I could do is click a couple buttons and I could actually turn the letters so that the background of the letters came from the picture.
Oh, yeah. Super easy.
Okay.
Yeah, super easy. All right.
With an intersect or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's even easier. All right. So let's go. We're going to make this 272 points. All right. Oops. Sample. Okay. We're going to make that let's make that. Well, let's get rid of that one. I don't know what that guy did. We'll make that black. So we make it nice and large, right? Okay. Got to make it just a little bit smaller. Okay. We're going to drop that underneath. All right. I'm going to turn off all those effects. Take your that whatever image you want to put into the text. Okay. If you press and hold the Alt or Option key and you go in between the two layers and you click once, it applies it.
And what's that called? Is that an intersection or something, or is it just cool AF?
No, there's it's called clipping. You're clipping
Okay.
the upper layer to the lower layer. Okay. And at that point, you know, any effect you can apply to that lower. Oh, okay. Come on. There we go. Okay.
Neat.
All right. And just make sure that when you move it, you move the two together. Okay. Ta-da! Easy enough?
Yeah, I'm gonna send you something that I used to do that I did with a thing that it's pretty neat. It gave the illusion of transparent letters on a picture that you could read, and it similar to what you did a couple of years ago with the signature business, but it had a way of offsetting the negative and the positive, and it's pretty. I'll have to send that to you, see if we can figure that out in Photoshop. Like I said, that was something I can't really explain it this late at night, so I'll send you a picture.
Okay, no problem. All right. So Seville Dam, there we go.
I like that.
Yeah. I don't know if I spelled Seville properly. That's actually a bad image to use for that particular text, but for an example.
What I did years ago with this was I was doing something for a musician, so I took one of his album covers and put the words on top of it and cut it out, and that became the header.
Yeah. So in this case, what if you move, if you grab one layer and not both layers, all right, what's going to happen is you're going to get a disconnect. All right. So what I suggest you do is once you create this, you take both layers and then you just group them together. All right. All right.
Neat.
And now you can take it and you can move them around together. So, okay.
I like that.
Awesome. All right, some awesome questions today. Hopefully I didn't leave anybody behind or fry too many brains. And hopefully we all learned something new today and not waste a day.
You didn't freeze again.
And I didn't freeze again. All right. So I just got to go in today and edit out that little part and put the two halves together and I'm good to go. I still don't know what's causing it. I keep making changes. Every time it happens, I change something in the software and it's still happening. So I don't know. I thank you for your patience with me on that. I really do appreciate it. So.
Saying OBS is free and open source,
Yeah.
You're not paying for it, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and as aggravating as that little bit is, it really, I mean, the software is very powerful and it does what I needed to do. So, I mean, look at these scene switching. Oh, look at that. Ta-da! Hey, this is what's going on. Oh, that's not what happened. That's not. Oh, there we go.
There we are.
There we go. What's going on? Back to the title. I wanna chat with you guys, nice and close and personal. I want to show you what I'm doing. Here it is. Oh, you don't want to see me? Okay, well, I can disappear. So awesome. All right, guys. Once again, thank you for hanging out with me. Don't forget, let your friends and cameras clubs know that, we're doing this on Mondays.
Oh, hey, Doug, can you do me a favor? Do you remember the person from when we went to the museum? She took a group picture of all of us.
Yes.
Yeah, I gave her my business card and I never got the picture from her.
Yeah, she usually does not edit right away. She usually waits.
Okay.
So, but I will be talking. I'll be talking to her tomorrow.
Okay.
I will.
My meeting is Thursday morning.
Okay.
So
I'll remind her, and
Yes.
if she's somehow misplaced your information, I'll give it to her. Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you once again. Always
Thank
a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you, Doug.
And we shall see you not next week, but the week after.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.